Hi, I'm Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Ashley.
And recently we were able to speak with Susie from Systems by Susie about different organizing topics, tips and tricks.
Yep, and we went over things like how to get started if you are looking to move or you're just looking to start with your hall closet or even your kitchen pantry, how to get started, things to do, and some really fun ideas that Jen and I hadn't even heard of that are pretty awesome.
Like game decanting. So
Yes.
we're both going to try that.
Hi, I'm Ashley Earle with this Daley Thompson home team of Sotheby's Realty in Annapolis with Jennifer Chino, my teammate. And we are fortunate enough today to have Susie with us here with Systems by Susie, which I'm sure many of you are aware of because the beautiful posts that you make and your social media presence is just absolutely gorgeous. I am always in awe of everything you do. So we would love to have a little chat with you and hopefully have some information to share with our clients and your clients alike, of some ways to help incorporate organization into our lives, because I know personally I need that in just about every closet in my house. So I would love to hear some of your wisdom.
Well, thank you for having me. It's so good to be here. We always try on our Instagram. We know it's a highlights reel, but we always hope to inspire people with our before and afters so that they can tackle and start organizing their own spaces at home. So I'm glad that that's a resource for you.
Very much so.
Well, we have some questions for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I think the first question that came to mind, and I know when we posted it on social media, a lot of people asked this exact same question. What's the best way to get started? We all see these inspirational posts on social media, things, we wish that we could just snap our fingers and make our house look incredible, like these Instagram posts. What's the best way to sort of get started for somebody who is interested in starting to get into this process of organizing, or even has an aspiration to make it look like a social media post?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think organizing can be really overwhelming, especially depending on your space and how out of control it's gotten. And so I always think it's best to start small because it's kind of like you have to work up your organizing muscles. And so by starting small, that really creates momentum. And then it makes it easier down the road when you have harder things to do. So I always suggest something like a junk drawer. You're not really any space that you're not personally attached to, kind of the low hanging fruit. So things like your cleaning closet, under your kitchen sink, a linen closet, a coat closet. Those are all really great places to start. And then the process is always the same, no matter which space you do. The first step is always to take everything out of the space and group like things. So whether we're doing a garage or a junk drawer, you take everything out and then you start grouping things together. So you group all your pencils together, your pens, your paper clips, your scissors, whatever space you're organizing, group like things together in categories that make sense. And then you know how much you have of each thing. It's also helpful to gather those things from everywhere in the house. So if you're doing a coat closet, go find your coats from everywhere else in the house. You could have some in your garage, in your closet, on hooks, wherever it is, gather them all together in one place. And then once you have them sorted by category, the second step is what we call a ruthless declutter. And that's really, being tough and being ruthless and editing out anything that you don't use, love, or want. And be honest about the last time you've used it. And is this, really the coat that you reach for when it rains? And if not, then donate it, pass it down, get rid of it. And then the third step is to contain it. So especially in some place like a junk drawer, you'll want to get some drawer organizers so that you give everything a specific home, because I really believe that clutter is just delayed decisions, and clutter happens when you don't have a home for something and you don't know where it goes. So you just decide to put off the decision of where it goes and you just put it on the kitchen counter. And so then it builds up. So if you have a home for everything, like in your junk drawer, if you know where the paper clips always go, it's very easy to just open up your drawer and put it in the container with the other paper clips. And that way your home stays clutter free. So like I said, I would start small and then work up to bigger spaces. Kitchens and pantries are really hard. So that might be something you work up to. And your keepsakes and photos, that is really the most time consuming and the hardest. So save that for after you've, got some organizing muscles.
That's great. That's
very
great
good
advice. As far as now that you're sort of in that mindset, where's your favorite place to shop for organizing items?
Well, always it's been the Container Store, and we just got one in our area, which is so exciting. That was really like literally the highlight of my whole year. But
All of us.
Yeah. What's great about Container Store is they've been around for a long time and their inventory doesn't change that dramatically. So if you get some plastic shoe boxes there, they're going to have them in 10 years from now. Whereas if you buy plastic shoe boxes or storage bins from Target, their inventory changes over time. And so if you need to add to it, it's hard to find the same ones that match if that's important to you. So I really like all of our staples at the Container Store. They also have a lot of the individual items. So for us, we use a lot of drawer organizers, for example. Well, you can get sets of them off of Amazon or Target, but Container Store is going to sell those individual size containers, which gives you a lot more flexibility when you're figuring out how to organize a space. We love places like Home Goods and Marshalls and TJ Maxx, but same thing, they usually just have one or two of a basket and we need like 10. So we shop mostly at the Container Store. But that said, there have been some really exciting new lines coming out from Target. There's one called Bright Room, and they have a really great new line of organization products. And then the Home Edit, there's very popular organizers on the internet. They have their own show and they have done some collaborations in the past, and they just have a new one with Walmart, and they have their own line, and they're really affordable, and they actually sell them kind of in sets, but you can get 5 or 6 containers for $25, whereas Container Store, one container might cost that. So,
Right.
Those are 2 places right now, but I'm seeing more and more stores coming out with organization products, which is exciting to have some new options to choose from.
That is exciting. And that's a great point when it comes to, expanding down the road with what you've already done, because I know from our closet, I pick those particular items and now I want to expand upon that and I can't find them again. So that's a great tip, because I had no idea that that's an important feature of the Container Store for sure.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. What's the biggest mistake people make when trying to organize?
That's a really good question. I think that relates to what we were just talking about, containers. People get really excited about organizing, which I do too, and I love, but they generally then go out and buy a bunch of containers and then come home and organize. And that's the wrong order to do things. The excitement is good, but I always look at shopping as the fun part. And so you have to put in the work first. So you need to first go through and take everything out, group like things, do that ruthless declutter, and then see how much you have left. I generally like to take a picture of the grouping so I can see the quantity, and then you know what size container you need. And you also need to measure your space. So before you ever start shopping, you have to take some detailed measurements, because oftentimes you then are trying to make these containers work in your space, and they're not the right size for what you have to store. They don't fit on the shelf. They might hang over, or maybe they're not utilizing that full depth. And so you really want to measure, because every shelf, every space is different. And then once you measure and do a little math, then you go out and you have a specific shopping list of the things that you need. And then you can walk through the Container Store with all the information, or Target with all the information that you need. And I think that's a much smarter approach than doing the shopping first. For me, it's like my little reward. Like after I put in the hard work, then I got to go shop.
That's a good way to put that, because I know Ashley and I love all of those stores, and we get super excited and see, new organizing baskets or something. And then you sort of buy them and then you take them home and you try to make them fit with what. So that's a much better way to get
absolutely
that.
Yeah, because I do that. I'll be in the store and be like, oh, I love this. And I would love to use this for X, Y, and Z. And then you get home and you're like, oh, it doesn't really work. So
Right.
the buying is the exciting part, of course.
That's right.
Definitely. So do you have a favorite organizing trend right now?
I would probably say two. One is decanting your spices. I personally, I didn't do it until this past year. So I've lived both ways, but we started doing it for so many of our clients. And decanting your spices just means putting them in all matching jars. And Amazon has made it so easy now because they sell the spice jar sets, and there's so many companies that sell really cute labels that you can put on. And I don't know, there's something about that just brings me joy every time I reach for a spice. Instead of all the mismatched, size bottles, now everything fits together so much better because everything is the same size. And I found it really easy to maintain. The other thing is decanting games. We have started doing that for a lot of our clients where, especially card games, we put in little 4x6 plastic cases. And that's been really great when we go to travel. I can just grab the Uno and I don't have to fight with the little box that's ripping or hard to put in, like the cards, and they all stack really neatly and we have them labeled. We also will take the board games and put them in mesh pouches. And so instead of it taking up like 3 or 4 shelves on your bookcase, you can put all of them in some zippered mesh pouches and put them in one nice, cute container and fit a lot of your games that way. So I think decanting games and spices are like my current favorite.
I absolutely love that. I know Jen's family and my family are both big game families. And I have this running thing that we can't have a single nice box in our house. Every single one of our board games, which we have a lot, every single one has a broken corner. And I'm like, can we not have a nice box in this house? Like,
do.
Yes.
Right.
I really like that idea.
Yeah,
I
know and some of them are really bulky to store, and then they hardly have any parts inside. So when you decant them, it just really reduces what you have, to store the space it requires, and it opens up that space for something else.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I had never heard of that before. That is absolutely extraordinary.
Never thought about that. Yeah.
I love that.
mean, it just never crossed my mind to take it out of its box and put in something else because you think I always would love when my kids would get gifts when they were little and they were a self-contained toy, a toy that came in a box or a toy that all the pieces went back together. I'm like, these are my favorite toys.
Yeah, you're right. Those are the best that have their own container that they come in. Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that. Okay, so when it comes to, you talked a little bit about this when we were going over sort of this process, but when you're actually getting rid of something, so say the rain jacket or clothes that you have, there's that rule about how many, what percentage of clothes you actually wear out of your closet. Is there sort of a time limit? I know people binged Marie Kondo during during COVID, and she asked, does it spark joy? But there's got to be something in addition to that I'm sure you can have some insight on as to how long do you take it? I have dresses and clothes that from when I was 20, it's ridiculous. I think they're beautiful, but I will probably never wear them again. But I think I need someone to tell me that it's okay to let it go.
Totally.
Time is up.
Yeah, but you are right. It's the things that have memories attached that are the hardest to get rid of. Some of those things in your closet are probably more keepsakes for you than actual, like you plan to wear them again. We often find this in men's closets who they might have a lot of concert t-shirts or something, and they're really just more keepsakes and they'll take up valuable real estate. And so one of the things we try and do is get the things out of like a closet, for example, with clothes that are more of a keepsake. And then if they're really important to you and you want to keep them, or maybe you want to make a quilt from all of the t-shirts you have, maybe take those out, put them in a separate bin and call it keepsake. You should only have your current size clothes in your closet. So if you have a size up, a size down, that's really common. But if you have a game plan and you're working towards going a size down, then that's fine, but clear them out of your closet. put them in a bin, label it with that size. And when you get there, you can bring it back out. But we really feel like everything in your closet should be something that you feel really good in, that fits, that's in good shape, that's in current season, and that you wear. I think one thing you can do is go per season. And I'm sure you've heard this trick. You put the hangers around the opposite way on the bar. And so when you wear them, you pull it out and then you put it on the right way. And it's a way to track like what you're wearing in the season and what you didn't wear. And so, I mean, I generally try and every time, every seasonal change, go through and see what I really didn't wear and then clear it out. There are some special occasion dresses and suits. And I mean, for a lot of people now with the pandemic, they're not wearing a lot of the nicer clothes that they used to wear, but they might need them someday. So, I mean, for situations like that, it's okay to hold on to them, but once in a while, like try them on. Do they still fit? Do you still look good in them? Is that what you would reach for? If you have them just because you paid a lot of money for it, or if it was on sale, or it was given to you as a gift, and you don't feel great in it, you need to pass it on and get rid of it. And that's where that ruthless decluttering comes in.
I actually wrote down what you said, the use, love, want. I like that. I wrote that down.
Yeah. And the spark joy, there's some truth to that. You know, you kind of know if you feel good in it or you love that item. And so I do think that sparking joy concept is a good one. But sometimes there's things in our homes that we also just need. They may not spark joy, but we need them. But I do think we, even like with pens, I have my favorite pen, you know, and so like, it's weird to say a pen would spark joy, but like, you know, my erasable pen is like my favorite pen. And so that's the one I'm always going to reach for. So I think you can apply it to, you know, that concept to different areas of your house.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Actually, I know you had a couple questions before we get into the moving advice.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a friend ask, how do you best arrange the pots and pans in your kitchen, in the cabinets? You know, sometimes it's wonky and they're all different sizes. So what is your go-to for that?
Yeah, you know, I often wish that they would design every kitchen with a solution for that, especially for lids, because most kitchens don't. And so we like to kind of nest the pots and pans according to their shape. But then for the lids especially, we like to use the lid organizers and get those vertically. And you can do that with some of your pots as well, your frying pans and skillets, things like that, depending on what your space is like. But especially for lids, it just makes it a lot easier to have those in a lid organizer or a pan organizer. And they make so many different ones that are adjustable. I have one under mine. I have a corner Lazy Susan area or corner cabinet, and it has like even a pull-out lid holder, and it's very narrow. And that has like been a game changer for me because it keeps them all organized. But I feel like with lids, especially using that vertical space is really helpful.
Yeah, that sounds good. Great. And then you kind of touched on it before. I had someone ask about spices, but that you said decanting them and labeling them is a great way to keep it all nice.
Yeah, and you can think about spices don't have to be in your pantry or your cabinet. They can also be in a drawer. They have some great spice drawer liners that you can do and have it in the drawer, and it's nice because you can see everything really clearly. But it really depends on your space. We've done them on Lazy Susans. We've done them on like upper cabinet. Have them in individual little clear bins, maybe either like alphabetized or like having your most commonly used in one of those containers, so you can pull it down off a top shelf and actually see what you have. Or if you have extra wall space in your pantry, don't forget that you could put up a spice rack in your pantry even and utilize that wall space, or like the back of your pantry door is another great place to store spices.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's great advice.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you.
Did you have other questions, Ashley?
And you kind of touched on the other one as well. The question I had was how you determine what containers are best for which space. You know, you decide you want to organize something, and you want stuff in bins, and you're like, well, what works best for this space and what works best for what I need to use.
Yeah, one good rule of thumb with containers is at your eye level and below, it's okay to have like solid containers because you can see down into them. But once you go above your eye level, it's helpful to have either clear bins or like wire bins that you can see through, or lazy Susans, because it's hard to have solid bins up high. You really can't see what's in them. And, when things are out of sight, they're out of mind. So that's kind of one rule of thumb. And then think of what you're using it for. For woven baskets, we're not going to use that in a closet because clothes might snag. But if it has a nice liner in it, or it's a cloth basket, that might work better for like linens and clothes storage. And sometimes with pantries, you want some wire storage. So like things can breathe, like your onions, potatoes, things like that. So it kind of depends what you're storing, but also think about kind of the quantity that you have. Usually in a pantry, for example, your biggest containers are going to be for things like bread, chips and crackers and snacks, and then maybe like breakfast, and then the other ones can be smaller, things like pasta and rice and grains and nuts, and those can be smaller containers, but you want a big enough container to hold what you usually have. And one thing when you are doing your pantry, make sure you're like fully stocked. Make sure you've just gone grocery shopping and that you have everything you typically have before you start organizing. We always tell our clients to do a big grocery run because we want to make sure that we give them a spot for everything. So try and have everything you typically store in that space there before you go out and you shop for your containers.
That's really good.
That's great advice.
So I'm going to head off to Costco.
My next house will have a Costco closet. That's the thing. So I'd love my next house to have a Costco closet.
Yes.
I love that.
Well, and containers actually can be good because they can give you a boundary. So if you have a chip container, then you can only buy as many bags of chip that will fit in that container. And so they give you this boundary of not over shopping. Like if you don't have room in your house for bulk storage, then you're kind of limited to the space in the container that you have. We often find that even when we're organizing kids' playrooms, it's kind of like, okay, well, this is the container you've got for stuffed animals. Once it gets to the top, you have to get rid of something. This is all the space you have, and that sets like a good boundary for them with their toys.
Oh, that's great advice. I didn't even think about that.
Like
Sorry,
that.
Kids, you can't have 3 bags of chips. We only have space for 1. I love that.
You got to eat what you have first, right? And then
I don't know how well that would go over in my house. I have 3 boys, all with 3 different chip likes. So.
I know it's not easy. It's not easy.
We take a really big chip container in my house.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so let's move into moving, because Ashley and I deal with this a lot, and that tends to be something that can be overwhelming to people to think about getting started. So when it comes to people starting to pack or getting into that process, is there just a piece of advice that you would give for someone getting started because we do have people who hire somebody from beginning to end, and then we have people that you provide services for that as well, but then there's some people who like the actual physical part of packing things themselves because they feel like they know where things are. So is there a piece of advice that you would give for people that are just getting in the process and going to have to start packing to move?
Yeah, well, I mean, probably the biggest overarching advice is, don't pack what you don't use. Do the editing and the decluttering before you move, because it's a lot of work to pack and unpack and moving. And you don't want to take with you anything that you don't use, want, or need, right? So I would think that's the first step is if you have the time, try and go through things before you move. And then one, like the physical, like when you're getting started to pack, I think it's always helpful to kind of make stations for yourself. So get all, get a good sample of all the supplies that you're going to need and have a place where you keep those. And then also designate places in your home where you're going to put everything that's going to be donated, or maybe everything that in a separate spot of things you need to return to people, or you're going to give to a family member or a friend. Keep those in a separate spot and make sure you are labeling those things, with painter's tape or something. So you're reminded of, what the next step is with that item. And then have trash recycling, like schedule some donation pickups for yourselves to give you some accountability and some deadlines. There's so many places that will come for free and pick up donations from your home. So, get those on the calendar and schedule those to keep you on track. And it depends the situation. Like if you are downsizing or you're helping a elderly family member move out of a home they've lived in for many, many years, sometimes it's easier to think about what they're going to keep versus what they're going to get rid of. Sometimes you do the opposite approach and you just decide what are the things we're going to pack, what we need or tag it in some ways, the things that are going to stay, and then everything else can go and be either sold by an estate company or donated. But sometimes you have to use the reverse approach for that situation.
That's great advice. I think that sort of reframes that, because sometimes not only can it be overwhelming for people. I know Ashley and I meet with people and we tell them, let's meet as soon as you are beginning to think about the stages. You don't have to start the process of listing next week. It could be a year from now. It could be 6 months from now, but let's start so then we can assist you and then help you bring in the professionals or the vendors, certain things that you need, because the more time you have, the better it is for you. But sort of reframing that, especially when people are, moving out of a house that they've lived in all their life and they've raised their children there, reframing that to let's talk about what we're going to keep. And Ashley has a lot of experience with that, sort of right sizing, if you will. But I think that's an extraordinary way to sort of reframe it that I think feels better for everybody.
Yeah.
If you can start early and have the time, it takes a lot of mental energy to go through, and it's very tiring because there's decision fatigue. You're having to make a lot of decisions. And that's one of the reasons it really helps to have someone help you in that process, whether it's a friend or a company like ours that will come in, because then at least once you've made the decision, we can make the next step happen. We can put it with donation, or we can pack it up, or we can label it, or whatever it is. It just saves you some of those steps, but it is mentally exhausting. And so if you have the time, I think it's worth it. It also gives you the time to process, especially if you're downsizing, and time to reminisce. We love getting to downsize with clients because we hear the most wonderful stories, and a lot of times when we're working with seniors, they'll just kind of sit at the kitchen table while we pack things up and they tell us what to keep or not. We're kind of the hands and feet, but we love hearing like the stories. So like give yourself time to process that. I know it actually makes the process of moving out of a space a lot easier when you've had time to relive some of those memories and go through that process.
Yeah, very much so.
All right. On the reverse side of that, once you have moved and you have your house full of boxes, is there a suggestion for getting started with that? I usually, the hardest part for me is always the kitchen. That is deciding where everything's going to go is the kitchen. But is there a piece of advice that you have for someone who is now starting the process of unpacking?
Yeah, unpacking is the fun part for us. That's like our favorite part. I think it helps to know what you have. And so a lot of times what we do is unpack all the boxes for the kitchen first. and group them according to what they are, so you know the quantity of what you have. And then we walk around with painter's tape, and we put painter's tape on all the drawers and the cabinets and start looking at what we have, like on the kitchen island and on the dining room table. And we're just looking at each category and finding a place. There's some things that are always usually in the same places. Like you want to put your silverware near the dishwasher. You want to put your glassware near like the refrigerator or wherever you're getting your water from. There's certain things like that we always kind of know where they're going to go or have a good idea. And the cabinets are more conducive to some things. But then, Tupperware is always, something that could go many different places. Your foils and wraps, your knives can go on the counter in a drawer. Your utensils are usually going to go next to a stove, your heating pad, those, are going to go in the same place. But I would say walking around with painter's tape and just kind of laying out the kitchen is really helpful. And that's something that we can even do kitchen consults for people who are renovating or moving, and we'll come around and kind of make that game plan to make sure that they have a place for everything. And then you have to be creative. You have to use the space you have, sometimes in an original way, but don't be afraid to move around your shelves. Most of the time people move in and they just leave everything as is, but you can buy little pegs for your, kitchen cabinets. And if they're missing or if they're too hard to get in and out, just buy some new ones and then move those around to the right height for things. Nothing is kind of stationary. You can move around all those shelves, and that sometimes helps make things fit the way you want them to. One more thing, sorry. Think in terms of zones. So like where you're making your coffee, where you put your coffee pot, it's nice to be able to have like your coffee mugs in the cabinet above it, and maybe your coffee and your sugar and everything you need to make a cup of coffee right there in that cabinet, or the drawer below it. You can organize your coffee and your tea in the drawer below it. So give yourself like stations, like a lunch making station where you've got maybe your Tupperware, your lunch boxes, your plasticware, whatever it is, bento boxes in one area, your Ziploc bags, your coffee station. If you have like smoothie or like a wellness cabinet, group that stuff together. So kind of think in zones too in the kitchen.
That's great advice.
Mm-hmm.
Ashley, did you have anything else?
No, I was just thinking how my silverware is in the wrong spot.
I know, I was too.
I'm literally thinking how I'm going to be doing my kitchen.
We have to take the carrier too.
Me too. And I'm thinking how my spices should probably be flipped and my glasses closed. Yeah, now I'm rethinking my whole kitchen now.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we often find our clients saying is we come into your space with fresh eyes. We're not used to the way things always were in your kitchen. So we will take things out and move a lot around on people. In fact, a lot of times we'll just leave our painter's tape on the outside because it takes some getting used to when you're used to something a certain way. But, it does help sometimes to have a fresh perspective. And then our goal is always after we finish to be like, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Like have it be intuitive and make more sense, saves you some steps in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
Makes perfect sense. Yes.
For the people that aren't familiar, Susie, can you just give a synopsis of the services that you provide so we can make sure that everybody knows all the fabulous and incredible services that you provide?
Yeah, sure. So we do full service organization. So any space in your house or business. So we do garages and basements and kitchens and closets and bathrooms and offices. We do all of that, and we're really full service. We've got a large team, so we can do spaces in a day. We can do whole homes in 4 days. And so we do all of the planning and the legwork for you. So it's really kind of we're able to most help clients who are very busy and they may not not have the time or the energy to put into organization or a move or an unpack, but they really value organization. They want their home to be organized, to have systems set up, to have it operating well. One of our big goals is to set up other people in your home to be more self-sufficient, and that lightens your load. So we do most of the work for our clients. The part we need our clients for is that ruthless decluttering. But other than that, you can have, your space, your garage can be organized in a day from start to finish. And then we take away the donations afterwards. We take out the trash recycling. Like, we don't leave you with the mess. Everything is done. It's labeled and organized, which it's nice for people to be able to outsource that to us. We love, love, love everyone on my team. We love our job so much. And it's like the best job in the world for all of us. It then saves our client, who that's not their favorite thing to do. They get their weekend back to enjoy time with their family or whatever they love doing, and they won't have to be organizing their basement that weekend. So that's what we try to do, is give the gift of time and help people love their homes.
That's fabulous.
And I would imagine it's much more than a weekend, because when you're not used to doing it, it takes so much longer.
Yeah. And, you're interrupted, especially if you have a family, like, you get interrupted all the time. And like, we work nonstop, fully engaged, fully focused. And sometimes it'll take us 2 or 3 people working 5 or 6 hours to do a space. And like, when do you have that kind of uninterrupted time? So it's just a really smart thing to outsource. It's definitely an investment. But once you do it, you're not going to always have to be reorganizing your garage, reorganizing your pantry. Like, we set it up in a way, you might have to tweak it, and you definitely have to maintain it over time, but you'll never have to do a full scale reorganization again, because it's going to be set up in a way that works for you and your specific habits and the way you live. Like, we ask a lot of questions before we organize so that we get it right for you and your family.
That's wonderful. And then how can people reach you? Social media, website? Can you share those with us?
Yeah. So on Instagram, it's at Systems by Susie, and Susie's SUSIE. And then we are also on Facebook. We have a newsletter that goes out twice a month, and we always love giving a lot of value and tips and inspiration in our newsletter. We also have our website, systemsbysusie.com. Same thing, there's a blog. We have a lot of links to the containers we love and that we use either on our blog or our Amazon storefront. So that's another way. But yeah, we'd love to have you follow along. And I'm always happy to answer questions. It's always, the next step is to schedule a free consult where I can give you an estimate, see your space, and give you an estimate before we get started. So I love it when people reach out or just share like organization projects they've done that we've helped inspire. So I would love to hear from anyone.
That's great.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been very eye-opening. I had no idea. This weekend, I'm going to, is it Decant the Games?
Yes.
Ashley and I will have to do that.
I know. I'm so motivated now. I want to start in my bedroom and pull everything out. My room is
good. Well, it brings up a good point. I think once you get started, getting started is always the hardest part. But when you do get started and then you see how good it feels, it really creates that momentum. So that's why start small, maybe not your whole closet, but maybe one drawer, or, start small and then create that momentum. So it was great being with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Thank you.